Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2025 McNair Conversations on the American South. My name is Joel Samuels, and I am the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of South Carolina. And it's my pleasure to welcome you here tonight. I am also the person responsible for the bolded language in every email that you've gotten over the past 10 days that read that no music will be performed. The alternative was that I would sing REM cover songs for the night, and I guarantee you, no one would win with that. This is going to be an extraordinary evening of conversation between Michael Stipe and our own Dr. Mark Smith. I'd like to extend a special welcome to some of our distinguished guests this evening, including the chair of the Board of Trustees at the University of South Carolina, Thad Westbrook, our former College Arts and Sciences Dean and my good friend, Marianne Fitzpatrick. And I'd especially like to recognize Chief Justice Jean Toll, last year's McNair honoree. Yes, please. There she is. A trailblazer in the law here in South Carolina and around the nation. And if you missed last year's extraordinary conversation, it can be found on the Take on the South website, and I would commend it to you if you have a chance. I want to thank you all for being here, and I want to thank everyone. I'm not going to name them all in the interest of time, both from the College of Arts and Sciences and the Koger Center who've made tonight happen. This is, without a doubt, the largest crowd we have had for a conversation, and we hope that this crowd will replicate for each and every McNair conversation into the future. Before we get started with introductions, I need to take a point of personal privilege as the Dean of the College, and not only say wow and what an extraordinary audience, but with a little bit of the violin music you might hear on PBS, I need to talk about the importance of events like tonight in the moments that we are in right now, and the importance of your presence and your support. As a college, we really value our engagement with the community. We see it as an essential part of what we do across the university, and tonight is one of many events that we do to bring our community together, town and gown, in conversation. It's a breath of fresh air for me personally, not to be crunching numbers about various scenarios in light of grant terminations and modifications, and just to enjoy this moment. And I hope we all have a moment to just relax and enjoy tonight. But to continue offering programs like this and the many others we bring to the community, we need your support now more than ever. Each March, we participate in the university's annual Day of Giving, known as Give for Garnet. And this year, I want to emphasize the importance of the College of Arts and Sciences Carolina Fund. The Carolina Fund at the college provides essential resources to address the most urgent needs across our college. It directly impacts the lives of our students, our faculty, our alumni, and supports many valuable programs like the one tonight. To quote Mark Smith, even the BBC is publicly funded. These programs are made possible by the generosity of people like you, so I hope you'll consider supporting our campaign this evening with a contribution to the college. There's a QR code in your program. I told you it was a completely solicitous moment. I've never done this before. But we are in extraordinary times, and that's part of the story. And they'll be displayed on the board here at the end of the night. Thank you for being part of our community, and thank you for your consideration in supporting our continued good work. I also want to take a moment to share some of the exciting events that we have coming up just this month and next month. The annual Open Book Series will be actually has an event tonight with an extraordinary author, and we'll have authors throughout the next several weeks coming in who are some of the most acclaimed authors in the world, culminating in a visit by South Carolina's own Percival Everett, author of James and Erasure, among others, and he'll be here. He will be here on April 4th. That will be in the Hootie Johnson Auditorium. Although it's sold out, there is a waiting list, and if you weren't aware of it and would like to come, please, please, please sign up. We're excited for that event. And then, over the next several weeks, in one of the more unique opportunities our community has ever experienced, the entire company of the world-renowned Joffrey Ballet from Chicago will be here on campus and in our community. It's the first time they've ever traveled as a full company to visit a university, to work with the students in the Betsy Blackman dance program, and to engage in a series of public events over the next several weeks, culminating here in the Koger Center on Saturday, April 5th, with a performance that will involve our students and that company. So again, I hope you'll be able to participate in those events. Indeed, we've been hosting events like this all year and for many years. Just in the last month, Daniel Mendelsohn, one of the country's leading public intellectuals, joined me in conversation on the topic of memory and history as part of our annual Solomon Tenenbaum lecture. That was one of the more extraordinary conversations I've been a part of in my time at USC, and it ended, for those of you who were there, you'll remember this, with me sharing the news about tonight's event with Michael Stipe, which had even Mendelsohn's jaw on the floor and him trying to rearrange his schedule to be here tonight. We also welcomed Dr. Ashani Weeraranta, a Sri Lankan-born American cancer researcher whose findings are contributing to the scientific understanding of melanoma tumors as part of our annual Berger Lecture on Cancer. This is just a small taste of the events just in the past few weeks and in the next few weeks. You can imagine what the whole year looks like, and we hope that different pieces of what we do will pique your individual interest. Now, turning to tonight's extraordinary conversation. Each year, the Institute for Southern Studies in the College of Arts and Sciences hosts the McNair Conversations on the American South. Made possible by the generosity of the late South Carolina Governor Robert Evander McNair, the McNair Conversations is a series honoring individuals who have made a lasting and significant contribution to the American South. They are recorded in front of a live audience, that's you, and later broadcast on the Institute's highly successful Take on the South podcast. Our 2025 McNair honoree, Michael Stipe, needs no introduction in this room, nor in any room in the world. Nonetheless, it is my honor to do just that. Born in 1960 in Decatur, Georgia, Michael Stipe is an artist, producer, and singer-songwriter. He attended the University of Georgia in Athens, which we will not hold against him, where he became involved with the local music scene. He fronted the band REM for 31 years, selling over 100 million records and touring the world. For the past decade, his focus has been cross-medium work, incorporating video, soundscape, sculpture, and photographic and digital imagery. He has released 4 recent photography books through Damiani out of Bologna, Italy. His first institution show was at ICA Milan in December 2023. He is currently completing his first solo album to be released in the near future, we hope. Michael primarily splits his time between New York City and Berlin. He will be joined in conversation tonight by the college's own Dr. Mark Smith, Carolina Distinguished Professor of History and Director of the Institute for Southern Studies. Professor Smith teaches American social and cultural history with an emphasis on the American South and on sensory history. He has lectured throughout the United States, Europe, Australia, and China, and his work has been translated into Chinese, Korean, German, Spanish, Danish, and others. I should also add that I do not know anyone with his particular accent, for those of you who have not met him before, who holds more knowledge about the American South than Mark. Indeed, Mark has been credited by many for creating an entire subfield of Civil War studies focused on the olfactory senses. And so it seems fitting that tonight we explore the Southern angle of one of the most prolific and versatile artists to emerge from the region as we collectively listen in on a conversation between Mark Smith and the remarkable artist, Michael Stipe. Please join me in welcoming them.
Well, thank you. Hi.
I think they like you, Michael. Just a bit. Well, good evening. Thank you, Dean Samuels. Before we start our conversation, a few housekeeping matters. I just want to say thank you to a few people who have been instrumental to this evening. Dean Samuels, unwavering support from the Dean's Office, people at Comms, Megan Plott, Morgan Watson, Laurie Carey. The folks at the Koga Center have been absolutely superb. Nate, Karen, Steve, thank you. Our amazing student ambassadors who are along the front here, thank you so much. And a special shout out to Dr. Laura Kissel, who's the head of School of Visual Art and Design. Thank you, Laura. This wouldn't have happened without you, and you know that. And thanks to you for being here this evening. As Dean Samuel said, this is a recorded conversation, so feel free to make some noise. We're going to talk for about 45 minutes. I'll ask a few questions, and then I'm going to read a couple of questions that audience members submitted a few days ago. I'm going to begin tonight's conversation with a quick look back in an effort to see forward. In 1886, an Atlanta newspaperman named Henry Grady gave an address which became known as the New South Speech. Henry Grady celebrated the post-Civil War New South. He boasted that it was a vibrant, democratic, lively place. But we know that it wasn't. What Henry Grady was selling amounted to a fable of the Reconstruction of the South. I had to work that in somehow. Henry Grady's New South was a very long time in coming. Some of it arrived in the 1950s and 1960s with the Civil Rights Movement, but another part, perhaps the most vibrant, dynamic, and vital part, arrived even later, in the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s. Tonight we celebrate one of the architects of that new South, that creative, ingenious, visionary South. He is most closely associated with what was Henry Grady's hometown, Athens, Georgia. We've already welcomed him. Now it's time to congratulate him. He is this year's McNair honoree, and as you know, his name is Michael Stipe. Congratulations, Michael. I'm going to begin at kind of the beginning, and I want to talk about your upbringing, which was very roaming, courtesy of your dad's military career. You lived in lots of places, Decatur, Alabama, Texas, Germany, Illinois, among others. And then you moved to Athens in 1978, which was apparently a rough and quite a lonely year for you. Can you tell us something about that upbringing and how it impacted you?
The impact is lifelong and resonant. Yes, we traveled a lot with my father, and I have memories, very distinct memories from each of the places that we lived. But I have to say that I discovered as a young man that Texas, when we lived there, is not a part of the South. It is its own thing, and even more so now. We can get into that later if you wish. Living in Germany felt at the time for myself and my sisters like a very exotic place. I was 7, I think, 6 or 7 when we moved there, and we were there for just under 2 years. I remember almost every day, I think, of that, and it's, in fact, my first real memory of music came from there. But my roots are really very much in the South, the real South. I'm not going to say anything bad about Virginia.
Oh, go on, it's fine.
I do like Richmond. And do we have people here from Virginia? Okay, wow, I'm so sorry. Really, my apologies. I don't think of, Virginia is its own thing, but the South to me really is the Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and then Louisiana is absolutely its own thing. And Texas is Texas, and we can't make apologies for it here tonight. But my roots really are very much here, and by here I mean about an hour away from here is where my maternal grandfather was born, in a town that now, I looked up the population today, 692 people. I can't remember the name. My mother and my sister are here. Maybe they can shout it out. And my maternal grandmother was born in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And we have people here from Mississippi. Okay, there we go. And my father's father was born in South Georgia, just above the Redneck Riviera, right at the border of Florida. And my paternal grandmother was born in Black Mountain, North Carolina. So we have South Carolina, North Carolina, Mississippi, and South Georgia. And I lost my accent at the age of 13.
Me too.
You
Me
did?
Too. Yeah.
So it was Sussex, and now it's...
Well, it was more Mississippi to begin with, and I don't know why.
Very good. I lost my accent at the age of 13. I think, I mean, if you pour enough Guinness down me, my accent broadens by several counties. Much like the cast of White Lotus 3. In fact, I think they're doing a great job. Can we agree? Parker Posey is an astonishing actor.
So, Michael, you mentioned your mum, who's in the audience,
Yeah.
Mary Ann. So I'm going to ask perhaps an unfair question, but I'll ask it anyway because she is in the audience. I want to quote her. She once described you as a Southern gentleman. What do you think she means by that, and do you agree? I told you it was tricky.
I am a gentleman, absolutely. I wasn't always. I was quite insecure and shy, very shy as a younger man, and I did terrible things. I think we all did. Nothing terribly regretful, just to say, but I wasn't always a nice person, and I allowed my insecurities to sometimes take over my more gentlemanly aspects. I have grown into quite a gentleman, and that's to say, you know, I do the gentlemanly things. I give people my taxi if they need it. I hold doors open for strangers, and if they don't say thank you, then I demand a thank you. And I am from the South, so I was born here, and I cherish the memories that I have of my time here, and those are as well ongoing and a lifetime. I intend to allow the South to be a part of me moving well into the future. Yeah.
So she was right, basically.
I'm a Southern gentleman, yeah. I guess we could say that, yeah. Thank you, Mom.
I'd agree with that. Looking back, what, in your opinion, made Athens, Georgia such a hotbed of creativity in the 80s and 90s? I mean, what was the alchemy there?
Cindy Wilson from the B-52s once said it was the water. Something in the water. I can't refute that. It's really something that you just cannot put your finger on, but there is something about Athens that is very fucking special. And I return there. There are people here from Athens. Okay. This is, after all, becoming a podcast, so you can be louder if you need to. And you can cut that line out. Yeah, there's something there. And when my father retired from the Army in 1978, and we were living in a small town outside of East St. Louis. It's now known for being next to the place where Wilco came from, and William S. Burroughs actually is from East St. Louis, so that's kind of exciting. Mm-hmm. But I was going to college there. I was living with a punk rock band. I had been immersed into punk music then at that point for 3 years, and had decided what I was going to do at the age of 15, and I was going to do it. My parents moved to Georgia to be closer to their parents who were aging, and they chose Athens because my uncle went to college in Athens, and he was a great activist there for disability rights, civil rights, women's movement. He was incredible, and he remains incredible. And but in 1978, to an 18-year-old living in this urban hellhole outside of East St. Louis with a punk rock band, we had no money. You know, we ate spaghetti and cut each other's hair. And Athens seemed to me like the most vanilla, hummus, hippie, Cowtown. I had visited there, and I was like, no fucking way. It's beige. There's nothing there for me. But I ran out of money, and I got in the car and I drove to Georgia and took night classes and was very lonely for about a year. You're correct in your introduction. I was still at that point extremely shy and quite uncertain about who I was and where and how I fit in. It took years for that to happen. And now I can sit on a stage and talk. And that's fine. That's good. But it took a while. I didn't know, of course, that what was happening there, this nascent scene with the B-52s, Pylon, the band Pylon, the Method Actors, these groups that were really, it was a group of about 50 friends who were connected only through their love of music, and the music was punk rock, or at the time it was becoming known as New Wave, which was a little embarrassing to all of us, but it was very punk, and I didn't know that was happening, and it was, and when I discovered it, boy, I took off like a house on fire, and I went and found 3 people that I convinced to start a band with me, and we became REM. So that's exciting. And
you might say that, yeah.
Yeah.
Mildly exciting.
That worked out.
That worked out, yeah. That worked out. Can you tell us about your views on the South in the 1980s and 1990s? Like, what did you think about it? And how has it changed, or has it? I mean, do you still maintain those views, or have they evolved in some fashion?
There was a pride to being from a small town that no one had ever heard of in New York and London and Los Angeles and Chicago and wherever else, Belgium, Milan. There was a real pride in being from this place that was only really known for the B-52s, and they were this beloved band that in many ways to this day have not received the recognition that I think they deserve for having literally they, as a group, just by being themselves, they moved mountains. They told New York, what you're doing is a little tired, and we're going to show you how to do it. And it was extremely original and remains extremely original. It was very, very, very queer, and at a time when queerness was not accepted or beloved, and they were just completely unafraid and unabashed about it, and it was amazing. And so that was the mantle that we had moving across the country, and then overseas finally, was that we were from the same place as the B-52s. And we were a little bit of a dance band. They were really a dance band. But, so that was exciting. Now, at the same time, I have to say, Mark, traveling to Europe during the Reagan 80s was extremely difficult. We represented America, and America was sending cruise missiles, and we would show up somewhere, and they'd be like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like, what the fuck are you doing? You cunts!" You know, I'm sorry to use that word, but that's England. That's a word
that's an English word.
That's a word that you can use in England, right?
And
I'm sorry, I got carried away.
Your pronunciation was exceptional, by the way. It was very good.
I've been called that by the members of Oasis more than once, so it's okay. Anyway, to my point, it was really difficult because I wasn't political. I didn't know. I didn't like Reagan. I voted for Jimmy Carter, of course, because he's from Georgia. Yes. And that was my first time voting. But, you know, we became quite activist and quite politicized very quickly because we had no choice. We had to answer these people, even little music magazines here and there, and they were everywhere. They were in Italy, they were in France, they were in Germany, they were in Belgium, they were in Luxembourg, they were in the UK, they were in Ireland, and they all had their separate things. This was before, of course, the internet and before cell phones and what have you. So we had to answer those questions over and over again, and we had to establish for ourselves a position. Also, being from the South, people even in America to this day have an idea of what the South is. And my job, part of my job throughout my entire adult life has been saying, that is not, that is, yes, it is. Yes, that exists. Yes, that completely sucks. It exists around the world and it always will. However, I am not that. And I represent something different. And you need to figure that out real fast. Now, that was also not an easy conversation to have, nor at the time, I was 23, 24 years old, not terribly convincing, but we did our best to let people know that not everyone in the South was horrible, really messed up, racist, misogynist pigs. And then through our actions and through our work and through the way that we composed ourselves and the way that we built our business, if you can call it that, we made good on those promises of being Southern gentlemen and being good people and being good people from a place that wasn't always good, and representing something that I think everyone in this room, I can make wide, sweeping assumptions that everyone here probably is in agreement with me that being from the South isn't always easy. I have a friend from New York, a dear friend. He's Iranian. He moved here at the age of 9. His wife is Chinese American, raised in Singapore. He really wanted to come and visit the home that I kept in Athens, but he was terrified of how he would be accepted as a brown man or as a man who is Iranian. And I had to convince him that it was really, really okay. And that Athens particularly is really okay. You can come to this little blue island of goodness and see it for yourself. And he now comes back on a yearly basis to visit, which is nice.
Switching gears just a bit, and this is one of those deceptively simple questions, and I don't know what the answer is. I'm curious, when did you know you'd become famous?
That's hard to say. There were degrees of it. The time that really, the time that it really landed on me, probably 1985. I went through a very deep depression for about a year and a half, and we didn't recognize what it was at the time. But I wasn't sure that I wanted to be famous then. And then I realized that it was something that I really did want. The teenage dream that I had at the age of 15 did not match up with the reality of fame and performing. And it didn't occur to me that you have to have a talent of some kind to be in a band. And so I developed that talent, and I did a good job of it. But I think really, to answer your question, Mark, when Losing My Religion became an international song of the summer kind of hit, and I remember walking through New York City and being recognized not only by people my age who looked kind of cool, but every single person looked at me and went, "You're that guy. You're Moby." And I was, "No, I'm not." I've had bottles of wine sent to me in restaurants around the world. This has happened more than once. Thanking me for my work in Dangerous Liaisons. John Malkovich. They're both very handsome men, so I accept it. The only thing that we have in common, other than we all have heads and eyes, is that we're somewhat bald and very, very pale.
Well, since you mentioned Losing My Religion, you know you've sung about it. I know it's nothing to do with religion, it's about unrequited love. But what about your faith and spirituality? You mentioned your grandfather earlier. I think he was a Methodist preacher, wasn't he?
That's correct.
is that relevant to you at all, or has it been?
Absolutely relevant. I grew up in a Christian household. I'm proud of my Christian family, and the true teachings of Jesus are instilled in me from a very young age. I do not identify myself as a Christian, but what's important to really take the real takeaway from that, I think, is the true teachings of Christ, an astonishing prophet who has impacted each of us, whether we like it or not, and not, as my mother would say if she was on this stage with me, not what the church does in the name of Christianity, and not the ways that is abused and exploited as a world religion, but really what Christ called for. And so, yes, I don't identify as Christian, but those values are deeply instilled in me and will be with me for the rest of this pass, this good one. Yeah.
Thank you.
There's a line in a song I'm just thinking of.
Yeah.
It's about, I chose a character who has lived through Katrina and is born and raised in New Orleans and has been put on a bus with a tepid cup of coffee in a styrofoam cup and is being sent somewhere to get away from the destruction that happened under George W. Bush and his administration. Well, it was a hurricane. I mean, it was I can't blame him, but the response wasn't very good. That's my point.
Fair.
Anyway, the line is, the kids have a new take on faith. You pick up the pieces and get carried away. And this is what I think the 21st century has to offer in terms of each of us developing the Church of Michael, the Church of Mark, the Church of Ian and Samantha. We take from, you're named Ian now, I just want to tell you that. Hi, Sam. We each take from these different belief systems and we piece it together to create something that resonates and speaks to ourselves. And that, as long as it's moving towards goodness and celebrating love and tolerance of one another, and is open-hearted and curious, that is what we need. That is the way forward for this century. And so that guy, that's just something that I wrote. Yeah.
Thank you.
I can also do yes and no. I tend to talk, and I don't want to take up all the time.
I would have you talk for the next hour. Right. I mean, I'm perfectly happy with that, Michael. Thank you. All right. So one of the things about teaching at a university when you're as old as I am, and the students come in where they're 19 and 20, is that they don't remember a time before the internet. They don't remember a time before cell phones. But you were bridging things. And I'm curious how you felt when your songs, your lyrics, your sense of storytelling of necessity became visualized on MTV. I mean, were there any Southern inflections to those videos? Were there any tensions in how you chose to visualize those lyrical stories?
Yes. The record company hated me for it. And MTV dismissed us as not interesting and sidelined. And so we were sidelined for a while until we finally brought culture came to us. We did not go to them. And I say that with all false modesty. We did not spearhead anything, but we were a part of a movement that did, in fact, change the way we think about popular culture. And MTV was a big part of that in the 1980s. I was as horrified as anyone by the dancing girls with big hair and the Michael Jackson ridiculousness. And I didn't, it just wasn't, it didn't represent who we were. Mm-hmm. And so I was trying to find ways to represent who we were as a band. And I did so with, in a few cases, I think you're referring to Howard Finster, a great outsider artist from Georgia, who was a friend of mine. One of the first videos that we made was in his garden with him. A series of videos that we made with my drawing and painting teacher, James Herbert, which is called Left of Reckoning, which is the 5 songs on one side of our second album that came out in 1983 or 84. And yeah, that was with R.A. Miller, another outsider artist from Georgia. And then a video that I directed, possibly my directorial debut. I'm blushing under the makeup as I say that, but I'm not wearing makeup, by the way. That was just but I could. I'll sideline that for a second because it's amazing for me to be backstage with you. And a lot of the work that I'm doing right now has to do with what happens behind the curtain. And so I'm placing, I don't want to say too much, but because I don't want to jinx myself, but I'm still working on it. But I'm placing a lot of it back there, and it's really cool. There's a lot of grease paint, and there's a lot of sadness and a lot of joy. Can't Get There From Here was a song on one of the records, and I just went around Athens and filmed all these silly things like haystacks and us in old cars, and I don't know. MTV hated it, but they finally came around to us a couple of years later, and then when Losing My Religion hit, that was 11 years after we started. We were a very slow burn, but by the time we got there, I had seen the great Sinead O'Connor's Nothing Compares to You, and I was very moved by it, and I realized that you could lip sync in a video and make it feel real. And so I chose to lip sync for Losing My Religion, and it was a huge fucking smash hit.
So it worked out, basically.
It all worked out, yeah.
All right, well, that's good.
There's another one. We did a song called The One I Love. And I had met, at that point, I was spending a lot of time in New York. It was my second home, with Athens as my home base and the base for the band. And I met a great artist and painter named Robert Longo. And I invited him down to shoot a video for the band, for the song. And he did the same thing. He was just enthralled with, being kind of dipped into the South and pulling all these things out of it and representing, the differences, I guess, between Athens or, Georgia and South Carolina and New York and New Jersey.
Yeah, so I was actually going to ask you about R.A. Miller and folk art and
yeah.
how, I know that it was important to you in the 1980s. Has it remained important to your art? That kind of connection to Southern folklife art?
Such a good question. I immerse myself so deeply into outsider art. That's my preferred term for it. I don't know what other people call it now. But that I almost kind of burned myself out on it. And the work that I'm now quite interested in is work by people that are heavily on the spectrum or who are utilizing their autism in a way that presents us with beautiful things to think about and to look at. And yeah, that's my taste has moved on, I would say. Mm-hmm. But I've kept, I don't have a collection, but I always bought stuff if I could afford it, and I couldn't for a long time. But I would buy stuff that I liked and by people that I liked. There's a artist from North Carolina named James Harold Jennings, who I went and visited with friends of mine, and he made these beautiful. He lived in 6 or 7 school buses that he had built little rooms into, and he had put tunnels where you could. He was a small man, and you could crawl between them, and that's where he did his work. And so I was really enthralled with him. But yeah, I mean, I still love outsider art. I love looking at it, and it inspires me deeply. It's also, I mean, I'm fascinated with Dutch painting from the 1700s, particularly dark landscapes. And I also love certain types of contemporary art. And then I despise a lot of contemporary art.
I'm not sure how relevant this is, but it might be in some roundabout way. I read that COVID for you marked a distinct break in time. There was very much a before and very much an after, which was interesting to me because you often play with Faulkner's idea that the past is never really dead, but COVID seems to be this break in time. Can you tell us a bit about that and why that was so?
I'll try to keep it short. I was born in 1960, so each decade for me is an important, I was born on January 4th, 1960. So every decade as we count them in our calendar is exactly 10 years of my life. And in 1980, I turned 20 years old, and I had, at that point, figured out who I was as a sexual creature, and I started exploring that very deeply. And then this gay cancer came that went on to become known as AIDS. And I ran from it. It was absolutely perhaps the most terrifying time in my life that I can remember. Thinking that I was sick, I wasn't, but not knowing. And it was, 4 years before I was able to get tested anonymously, going on a tour the next day to find out that I was HIV negative, and thrilled that I had made it through that. But it left a very deep wound inside of me. That's along with the number of people that I lost, and lovers and people that I was close to, and with New York as a backdrop, living just off of Christopher Street, there were days when you would only see people who were obviously very, very sick and on their way out. And so it really impacted me as a queer man. Fast forward to 2020, and here's a disease that you don't have to have sex to get sick and die. You can just breathe and get sick and die. And I didn't realize how much I had buried the HIV/AIDS years of the 1980s. And it hit me really hard. I'm now in therapy. I'd never had therapy before. This might be too much information, but I don't think it is. My best friend turned to me and said, "You haven't been this stressed out and wound up since the 1980s and AIDS." And I said, "You're right." And he said, "You need a therapist." So I found one through my goddaughter, and it's worked out really well for me. Yeah. But we are still, I read an article yesterday about people living with long COVID, and a friend of ours was joining us tonight, driving from Asheville, North Carolina. She's unable to come because her daughter tested positive for COVID, and so she had to stay home. And we are, I hope, and I'm going to hope that this is wood, I'm very concerned about the avian flu, and but I'm approaching it from a different place than the way that COVID hit me. It did hit me very hard. Where did you read that?
I read wide and deep for this.
I
can't remember.
No, that's okay. That's all right.
But it's not wrong, right? I mean,
No, it's absolutely correct. I went completely bonkers during COVID, and I have the photo book to prove it. I put out a book of photographs thinking I need to respond to this moment, because that's what artists do. You respond to the moment.
Right.
You try to push everyone through it towards something that's easier and better and greater. And it's not, it's a very, very bizarre book. But I mean, I'm proud of it. It's the runt baby of my babies. Yeah.
Well, actually, that was very helpful lead on, because, I mean, you've embraced multiple artistic forms, eye, voice, hand, and I'm curious what the challenges and rewards are for embracing that multiplicity. For example, does vulnerability play a part in that artistic roaming? You've said that in order to produce art, you need to be unafraid. And I'm just curious, what does that fear look like to you, and how do you overcome it?
If you go back and listen to fear has been a big part of my life, and then I think embracing and acknowledging that has been a big part of my later life. And it was. I went to Patti Smith, a dear friend and a great mentor to me in many ways. And at one point, I was having a lot of trouble. I was in a writer's block. I had a record that I needed to finish writing the words to, and I was just stuck. And I said, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go with this. I don't know. I've explored all these different, I've done all my tricks to make this work, and it's not working, and I don't know what to do. And she just was like, you need to walk unafraid. And I took that phrase, and I turned it into a song, and I thanked her for it. And I actually said, can I have it? And she said, it's yours, take it. So I wrote a song called Walk Unafraid. And I'm just really trying to take my own advice in that regard. How did we get here? We were talking about...
We're all over the place.
We're all over. Well, that's
the nature.
Yeah, I'm a circular describer. Is that a word?
It is now.
Thinker. Yeah.
Joel mentioned in his introductory remarks that last month the College of Arts and Sciences hosted as its annual Solomon Tenenbaum lecturer Daniel Mendelsohn, who is the editor-at-large of the New York Review of Books. And during that lecture, Joel asked Mr. Mendelsohn the following question. He said, which non-literary piece of culture, for example, film, TV show, painting, song, could you not live without? Do you know what his answer was? REM.
Oh.
And he said...
Wow.
He said, it would be very hard to think of my life without their 1992 album, Automatic for the People. So I'm going to ask you the question that was asked of Daniel Mendelsohn. Which non-literary piece of culture, film, TV show, painting, song, could you not live without, and you can't say the New York Review of Books?
That's fucking hard. I'm thinking of, there are, oh God. I can't do the obvious. I mean, everyone knows kind of a little bit, you know, the things that really impacted me and pushed me forward as a creative person. The mixture of, and I think that's where the last question wound up. I'm sorry, I got off track. The level of ego and self-absorption paired with humility and insecurity that it takes to do what I've done is profound, and a lot of people don't get it right, and I haven't always gotten it right, but when I do, it lands and it works, and of that I am very, very proud. The obvious answer would be the third track on the first album by Patti Smith called Horses, which came out in 1975, and which I bought the day it came out and listened to all night long and threw up. I was eating a bowl of cherries, and that's all that I ate. I was 15, and I cleaned myself up and went to school and said, that's what I'm going to do. And I commenced to do it. So I would say that track, which is about a young boy whose father dies, and he goes out into the field of birds after the funeral, and he imagines a spaceship with his father in it, and the spaceship takes him up into the sky, and he's transporting himself. He's working, obviously, he's working through his mourning and his grief with this fantastic imagination. And it's based on a true story. But I don't want to say that. What I want to say is, I was in Paris. My boyfriend is French, with his mother, and we were at the Pompidou. This was maybe 10 years ago. And there's an artist, Bruce Nauman, who in 1967, I think he created a piece made of concrete, which is the negative space under a wooden chair, right? So he turned the chair upside down, put cardboard on it, I guess, poured concrete into it, and presented a cast of the space under my chair, 1967. Another artist who you may recognize by name, Rachel Whiteread, is from Britain, and she took that idea and expanded upon it, and it has become her entire career, and she's astonishing. But she, among other things, has gone into poor neighborhoods of, I want to say Newcastle, poor neighborhoods in cities that are industrial or formerly industrial, and done concrete casts of the entire interior of a home. So there are these massive, she did the library. She did the library in Berlin. If you go to Hotel de Rome in Berlin and you walk across, there's a church and there's a giant space and there's a window in the street, in the square rather, and you look down into it, and it's a Rachel Whiteread piece, which is the negative space of the library that was kept by the Nazis of books that they considered to be degenerate. So you see where the books would be, but you're looking at the negative space. It's extraordinary. Okay, so we're back in France. We're in the Pompidou. Right. I'm with my boyfriend's mother. We buy our tickets. I'm talking to her in bad French. I'm walking backwards. And I turn around, and there in the lobby of the Pompidou is a Rachel Whiteread interior of a home. It's huge, and I burst into tears. It was so moving. I recognized it instantly, but it was the last thing I expected to find that day in the foyer of the Pompidou Center. It traces back to Bruce Nauman, Rachel Whiteread. I have a piece now, which is my version of Nauman's cast of the space under my chair, but I did a cast of the space under my cheap plastic chair. So I did those, the monoblock chairs, the cheap plastic white chairs that we see everywhere, and I cast that, and I did 7 versions of it, and one of which is a chair from the yard of my boyfriend's grandfather who passed away recently. So there's a resonance there that's quite personal. But I think, and I don't know if this is true or not, I think Bruce Nauman got the idea from Brancusi. And Brancusi was a Romanian artist who lived in Paris and had, among others, Isamu Noguchi, the Japanese-American, unbelievable, went and interned under Brancusi. And I was at his museum last week in Long Island City. Incredible work. But yeah, I would say that, maybe just that idea of a negative space, but in the form of Rachel Whiteread at the Pompidou. There.
I know lots of people probably know this story, but I think it's so poignant. If you could just share it very briefly.
Is this a yes and no? Yes and no? Because they're exhausted. Look at this.
No, they love it. They want more.
I'm sorry, I feel like I'm talking too much. I'm sorry.
So you mentioned Patti Smith and that terribly important moment when you're exposed to her music. It's much, much later that you actually pick up the phone when you're in Spain, I think, and call her. Could you tell people why you phoned her and what happened as a result?
Yeah. It was my former band, REM, were touring. We had just flown from Singapore to San Sebastian, which is in the north of Spain. It was a 26-hour trip. I wrote a song about it. called Departure, which is actually a great song. And, well, it is. It's not really what I listen to, but I like it very much. And yeah, the song is written about, in this trip from Singapore to San Sebastian, there was a lightning storm. It was orange, the color, the main color of the storm. And it was below us. We were across probably some ocean, I don't know which one. And the Indian Ocean, maybe. And no, that doesn't make sense. Well, we were above the ocean. But we were above the storm, and so I was looking out the window and everyone was asleep and it was orange. And I got really sad because a friend of mine had died a few years before that, and I was upset that this is the kind of thing that he would have really loved. And I was really angry. I was upset, and then I was sad, and then I was angry that he wasn't there. And so we landed. I was very jet lagged, and I wrote the song on a hotel napkin, and it is exactly as I wrote it. And that's brilliant when it happens like that. It doesn't always. But we're in San Sebastian rehearsing for the European leg. My best friends are there with me. Tom Gilroy, Jim McKay, Jane Pratt was there. Ethan Hawke was there. Nena Cherry was there with my goddaughters and her husband Cameron. And Doug Copeland was there, the guy who wrote Generation X. We were all there. And we met these anarchist students, film students. They had blue hair and they were really Spanish and they were beautiful and they loved smoking hash. And they turned us on to absinthe, which was wildly illegal at the time. They took us to this little mom and pop store, and this mama, kind of like in her 60s, they asked the right question, and she looked at all of us and went behind a curtain and bent down and picked up these clear bottles with cassette tapes, the sticker from a cassette tape, and on it said absenta. And it was hooch.
The real thing.
It was the real thing. So we were with these hash-addled absinthe drinkers. It doesn't get better. I mean, this is like, it's like Toulouse-Lautrec, right? And it's Valentine's Day, and Patti Smith had recently lost her husband, and it was Valentine's Day, and I thought she needs someone to call her and just say Happy Valentine's Day. So I got her phone number and I called her.
And you'd never spoken to her?
We'd never spoken before, no. And she knew me from MTV. She knows all those videos. She loves Into the World as We Know It, and I feel fine. And her husband, Fred Sonic Smith, was an astonishing singer, songwriter, guitarist. Yeah, I said Happy Valentine's Day, and that was that. We met later, I think that was in February of 1995, and we met in July or August of that same year when the band played in Detroit. And I went to visit her on a day off and met her and her daughter and her son. I'm performing next week with her daughter for a benefit concert at Carnegie Hall. And we're performing, it's a celebration of the songs of Patti Smith. So it's a nice full circle.
Yeah, it is.
Life is wonderful. Whoever said never meet your heroes, is that? Meet your heroes. Some of them are going to be assholes, but most of them are probably pretty cool.
I'm going to turn our attention to some of the questions that people thoughtfully wrote in to ask you. And there's a lot. I can't possibly go through all of them. They were all very probing, very intelligent. I'm going to give you a copy of them after tonight, so you can see them. So I've selected a few for you to answer tonight. Not that many, but enough. I've tried to avoid things that duplicated my questions, and sometimes I've bundled these questions together that are very similar. So here are the questions I thought were quite interesting. The first is from Charlie Stern. Charlie, are you in here? Oh, hello, Charlie. Okay, so Charlie's question, Michael, is this. Michael, do you accept my apology?
Absolutely.
Well, let me give you some context before you forgive him, all right? Because I'm not sure you know this. So here's what Charlie confessed, really. In 1985, says Charlie, when I was a freshman at USC, I attended the Fables show at the Township. I met Michael after the show. Earlier, during the show, I was pulling on Michael's mic cable to mess with him. It got stuck under the monitor, and I reached up and I freed it. He saw me do that, and he gave me a thumbs up. I lost my mind since he recognized me as helping him, but I was actually the cause of the problem. I would like to apologize for messing with him and come clean that I really didn't deserve the thumbs up. Do you forgive Charlie?
Thumbs up. I have really strong front teeth. The number of microphones that have tried to smash them out of my mouth, that happened more than once, but it's okay, Charlie. We can all move forward now.
You've been absolved, Charlie. Congratulations. The next question really comes from two people, but they're separate questions, from Wendy Homeyer, and I'm going to bundle it with TJ Lyerly's question. Wendy asks, in 1983, REM played twice at the Russell House Ballroom at USC, first with the English Beat, and later that year with Let's Active. During that time, college radio stations like WUSC were vital in promoting emerging bands. Did you ever connect with WUSC, and what do you remember most about those shows and the atmosphere at USC back then? And TJ Lyerly asked a similar question. What was your impression of Columbia when you first came to play here in the 80s? Do you have any good memories apart from Charlie?
I distinctly remember Let's Active, the Mitch Easter fronted, Winston-Salem based, incredible band. And we toured with them a lot. They're great friends. And Mitch, of course, was the producer for REM's first two albums. The first single? No, I don't know. The first EP and the first album, Murmur, and the second album, Reckoning, were all done at Reflection Studios in Charlotte, North Carolina, which I recently went to, oh God, this is gonna sound really name-droppy, but it's okay. I'm friends with Elton John. He's fucking amazing, Charlie. So I've met most of my heroes. Elton worked on a Broadway show based on the life of Tammy Faye Baker. And I went for the opening night, and I met Tammy's son, who was there, and he was very sweet, and he's very cool. And Elton and David were there, and Jason Sellards, the singer from Scissor Sisters, wrote the score, wrote the music, and it was a really good night, and it was the play was really super fun. But when we recorded those records with Mitch Easter, we recorded at Charlotte's premier religious recording studio, whose one of their main clients was the Praise the Lord Club. So at one point, the guy who set up the engineer said, "You're familiar with PTL?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I've watched him on TV." And he said, "You're singing through Tammy Faye's microphone." Murmur and Reckoning were recorded. on the same microphone that Tammy Faye Baker sang her songs. It's just mind-blowing, isn't it? So there's Let's Active, and then there's the English Beat. And they were oh my God, they were incredible, that band. They were just astonishing. They had 2 lead singers. There was Rankin Roger, and there was Dave Wakeling. And Roger is black, and Dave is white. And the band were a mixture from England, and they had this incredible. It wasn't until I met the Go-Betweens from Australia that I found a group that could work together in such harmony is the wrong word, but they each presented different ideas that came together to create something completely new. And at a time when, white people and black people weren't on stage together, it was incredible, but they were just unbelievable musicians and performers. Anyway, years later, in London, I'm at our record company's office for the first time, and Stipe Baders was there from the Dead Boys. I met him. The bass player, whose name was Shuffle, from the English Beat, was there, and he had a new band that he was presenting for the first time to the record company. But before he brought in the singer, whose name is Roland Gift, he told me that I looked like a fucking hippie because I had long curly hair, and I looked great actually, but and I said, you look like a fucking busboy, because he had short hair. He looked ridiculous. We all looked great, but anyway. In true British we've toured together fashion, we exchanged insults, and then he introduced me to Roland, and that was the beginning of Fine Young Cannibals. So exciting, right? All this to say, so I've dropped a bunch of names here, but I have no memory of playing in Colombia. I'm really sorry. I'm so sorry. Did I skirt around that well? Yeah. No, to be completely honest, when I was touring with the band, and I go into a trance state, particularly on stage, and I sometimes have to be told what happened. I don't really remember. When it's good, when it's great, I don't really remember. And if someone says, oh, you did that thing with the monitor, and the guy almost knocked your teeth out, and you gave him the thumbs up, and oh yeah, I remember that. Charlie.
All right, I like this question.
Well, we covered the bases there, didn't we? Tammy Faye Baker, Charlotte, North Carolina, Mitch Easter, Let's Active, Rankin Roger, Dave Wakeling, Roland Gift, Fine Young Cannibals, London, Stipe Baders was just there. Elton.
And Charlie.
And Charlie.
Exactly. I like this question. This is from Mike Deutsch, and I like this because it brings us up to what you've been, or some of what you've been doing since 2011, when REM disbanded. And Mike asked this question. Your book covers sculptures at Jackson Fine Art in Atlanta featuring letterpress box text with names like Joan Didion, Edward Albee, Elton John, and LeBron James. Each rock a unique vibe with the chosen font embodying the personality of the celebrity. What inspired these bookish sculptures, and how did you pick the names?
I'm glad we came back to this, because that was, I created these pieces there. It's the covers of hardcover books, but with no pages inside. And I put people's names on them who, to me, were heroic in the year 2020 and 2021. I had set out in 2019 to travel the world for a year. And my boyfriend is a great portraitist. I'm not, but I love taking pictures of people. I'm a huge fan of Richard Avedon. And my task in 2019 was to travel the world and photograph, do portraits of women who I found to be courageous and unflappable and brilliant. And I started with Joan Didion, who I knew through Patty, and I reached out to her. I actually started with Tilda Swinton, who came to my studio in New York, and we did a series of images, very Avedon, and then my goddaughter, and then a dancer named Martha, and then another friend of mine, Erica, who's a non-binary trans artist now living in California. And this was the beginning of I wanted to find Jane Goodall. I wanted to go to Joan Didion, we mentioned earlier. COVID happened, I couldn't travel, and I decided to make a book about the times. So I reached out to a woman who I've worked with in the past, who's a master printer, and we made these book covers with the names of people who, it expanded. It included men at this point, right? Men who are inspired by courageous, vulnerable, amazing women. And I put their names on book covers and I photographed them as a portrait. So I put out a portrait book that's not altogether successful, but it does represent, in a way, the moment that we all moved through in 2020, through COVID, when we weren't able to be around each other. And I also reached out to a friend who's a ceramicist, Caroline Wallner, in New York State, and asked her to make a series of vases with people's names on them. So those included Maria Callas, Vic Chestnut, Madonna. I don't know why Madonna was in there, but I do like her. I think she's an astonishing songwriter. I just want to say that. Not a hater.
Thank you. Can you give us a quick can you just give us a glimpse?
Okay.
I've learned my lesson
All right.
here. All
right.
What's next for Michael Stipe?
Yes.
Well, it's been a lovely evening. Thank you very much. I know you're doing all sorts of stuff. Can you share some of it with us?
I'm working on a solo album. It's been, don't clap yet. It's been really difficult because, of course, REM set the bar so high for me, and I can't get that out of my head. And so I'm separating myself from the world in the coming months to work on finishing the 9 songs that I haven't yet written the words for. But the songs are there. They're amazing. I have 9 already written. Some of them are not amazing. And so what I want is 18 songs that I can then bring down to 8 or 10 and create my version of a great album in the year 2025. That's where we are, yep. And so that's really at the front of my thinking in my head right now in my work. And then I'm working on the 5th book of photographs. This one will be in chapters. I had a meeting about it last week at the Chelsea Hotel, which was really exciting. I don't spend time there. I think it's haunted and weird, but I met the publishers there, and we talked about the 5th book for Damiani, which is based out of Bologna. And so I'm excited about, putting together a book of chapters. Okay. Photographs. That's it.
Okay. All right, I think we've got time for one last question. And this is from Audra Vaz. And she asks that one of the fastest growing majors at the University of South Carolina is music industry studies. And it attracts those students who want to work in music or music adjacent careers, from performing to producing to everything in between. What advice would you give students embarking on this professional journey?
I always did a really good job of ignoring the more business side of the music industry. I was surrounded by people who protected me and allowed me to be the person that I am, who you've met a pretty good version of tonight, I have to say. It's not always easy. In every way possible, destroy streaming. It's the worst. Environmentally, it's a complete disaster. It should go out the window with the current administration as soon as possible.
Sound advice.
I'd like to give a shout out to the people here signing at the side of the stage. My sister, taught hearing impaired and profoundly deaf people for her entire career. And I wrote a song about it called Sitting Still. But I'm happy that you're here. Thank you.
Michael, you've been very generous with your time, your wisdom. So it remains for me to congratulate you on being this year's McNair honoree. You have my, and especially their, enduring thanks for a fascinating conversation, and much more than that, for enriching our lives. Please join me in thanking a Southern gentleman, Michael Stipe.
Thank you. Thank you.